I was 29 when this happened. At the time, I worked as a freelance graphic designer, the kind of job that lets you disappear for a few days as long as deadlines are met. I've always been quiet, not anxious exactly, just observant. I notice patterns, sounds, small changes in people. That's part of why this stuck with me. This happened in mid-October a few years ago during a solo fall camping trip in northern Pennsylvania. I'd grown up camping with my dad and later with friends, so being alone didn't feel reckless to me. The campground wasn't remote wilderness, just a state forest site with spaced-out camps, fire rings, and gravel roads looping through the trees. Cell service was spotty but not non-existent, the kind of place families and retirees go for foliage season. I arrived on a Friday afternoon, the air sharp and clean, leaves already covering the ground in thick, damp layers. The trees were mostly bare, which made the woods feel open in a way summer never does. You could see farther. That felt comforting at the time. I checked in at the ranger station, got a site number, and drove my old Subaru down a narrow road lined with oaks and maples. Everything felt normal, pleasant even. I remember thinking how quiet my head felt after weeks of city noise. I didn't know then how loud silence can become when it starts paying attention to you. I set up camp slowly, deliberately. Tent first, then sleeping pad, then the little folding chair I always bring even though it barely supports my weight. The sun was already dropping lower, turning the trees orange and gold. Somewhere nearby, a couple laughed. Another site had a dog barking once or twice before being shooshed. I cooked a simple dinner, instant rice and canned chili, on my camp stove, eating straight from the pot. I remember scrolling through my phone while it cooked, half watching a football recap with no sound. The signal flickered but held. Around dusk, I took a short walk down the loop road, mostly to stretch my legs. I passed a few occupied sites, nodded at people, exchanged brief evening greetings. Nothing stood out. Everyone looked like who they were supposed to be. Couples, older men with fishing gear, a family unloading firewood. Back at my site, I built a small fire. The temperature dropped fast, and the smell of burning leaves mixed with smoke. I wrapped myself in a hoodie and listened to the fire crackle while the woods darkened. By 9 p.m., most of the campground was quiet. Fires burned low. Occasional footsteps crunched in the distance. I wasn't drinking, just sipping from a thermos of coffee and reading on my Kindle by headlamp. When I finally crawled into my tent around 11, everything felt ordinary. I zipped the flap, turned off the light, and lay there listening to the soft ambient sounds of the forest. That's when I noticed how distinctly I could hear footsteps. At first, I told myself it was someone heading to the bathroom. The campground had a central restroom, and people walked the loop road all night. Gravel crunches differently when someone's close, though. This sounded slow, heavy. Crunch, pause, crunch. The steps didn't pass my sight. They stopped nearby. I held my breath listening. I could hear the fire pop faintly outside my tent, smell smoke drifting in through the mesh. Then the steps moved again, circling. Not close enough to touch the tent, but close enough that I could tell they were off the road. In the leaves, I felt stupid for being scared. I'd camped dozens of times. People wander. Someone could be drunk, lost, curious. I waited for a cough, a phone screen glow, anything humanizing. Instead, the steps stopped directly behind my tent. I lay perfectly still. My heart was loud in my ears. After maybe 10 seconds, the footsteps moved away. I exhaled, almost laughing at myself. Probably someone cutting through to another site, I thought. I forced myself to relax, staring at the faint outline of the tent ceiling. Just as my body started to settle, I heard a soft, metallic sound. Not a voice, not an animal. Something being set down. It came from the direction of my fire pit. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. The fire was almost out, just glowing embers. I scanned the area quickly. Nothing, no person, no movement, just trees and darkness. I zipped the tent back up, telling myself I was overtired. The forest plays tricks on you at night, especially in fall when everything is dry and brittle. I didn't sleep easily, but eventually exhaustion won. I woke up around 3:30 a.m. to the sound of something brushing the tent. Not wind, not leaves. It was rhythmic, slow, like fingers grazing fabric. I froze, my body locked. The brushing stopped, then resumed near the tent zipper. I reached quietly for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. No signal, just the dim glow of the screen lighting up the tent interior. Outside, someone cleared their throat, softly, deliberately. I didn't respond. I didn't move. After a moment, the sound stopped. I listened until my ears hurt. Minutes passed. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself the safest thing was to wait until morning. I lay there, barely breathing, until the sky began to lighten. At first light, I unzipped the tent and stepped out. That's when I saw it. A folding camp chair, mine, had been moved. It now sat directly facing my tent, about 6 feet away. On the seat was my thermos, standing upright. I knew I hadn't left it there. I always keep it by the fire ring. I scanned the area, heart pounding, no one in sight, no voices, just birds starting their morning calls. I packed up fast. No breakfast, no coffee. I shoved everything into my car with frantic efficiency, hands numb from cold and adrenaline. As I closed my trunk, I noticed something else. Footprints. Fresh ones. They led from the trees behind my sight, circled the tent, and stopped right where the chair had been placed. They didn't lead away. I was halfway into the driver's seat when I heard a voice behind me. "Heading out early." I turned so fast my neck hurt. A man stood a few yards away, just beyond the edge of my sight. Mid-40s maybe. Tall, average build. Dressed in neutral hiking clothes that didn't stand out. No backpack, no visible campsite nearby. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Too thin. "Didn't sleep well." He nodded slowly. "Forest can be loud." I didn't reply. I was acutely aware of how alone we were, how no one else was visible. How quiet it was. He glanced at my tent, then at the chair, then back to me. "You dropped this last night," he said, gesturing toward the thermos. I swallowed. "I don't think so." His smile tightened. "Pretty sure you did." I shook my head. "I'm sure I didn't." For a second, his expression changed. Something cold slipped through. Then it was gone. "All right," he said softly. "Just thought I'd help." He took a step closer. I opened my car door wider, keeping it between us. "I need to go." He stopped, tilted his head. "You camp alone often?" he asked. "No." A pause. "Smart," he said. I got in the car and slammed the door. As I started the engine, I saw him step back into the trees, not in a hurry, like he knew there was no point following. I didn't look in the mirror until I was on the main road. I drove straight to the ranger station, hands shaking so badly I had to pull over once just to breathe. I told them everything, the night noises, the chair, the man. They took notes, asked calm, procedural questions. One ranger walked the site with me later that morning. They found footprints, but no one matched the description. No reports, no cameras in that part of the forest. The ranger told me it was probably a misunderstanding, that some campers like to check on others. I didn't argue. I knew what I felt. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep properly. Every sound outside my apartment felt intentional. I double-checked locks. I stopped camping alone entirely. I still don't know what he wanted. That's what bothers me most. Not knowing if I left before something worse happened or if that was always the plan. It's been years now. I still camp, but never solo. Never without a dog or another person. Sometimes in the fall, when the leaves start to dry and the air gets sharp, I think about that chair facing my tent, about how someone took the time to move it, to wait. And I wonder how long he'd been watching before I ever noticed the footsteps.